Welcome. You're watching Ask Your Father, a Guadalupe media production, a show where we get to ask the priest questions that are bothering us, questions that we may have had for a long time. A show where the priests come and try to come down to us and explain to us what it is we're confused about, educating us. Today, we have with us Father Scott. Welcome, Father Scott.
Thanks, Vince.
It's always a pleasure to have you on this show.
Good to be back.
Yes, of course. You were one of the first fathers on the show, and of course, we're always glad to have you.
Sure.
I am your host, Vincent Palacio. Today, we'll be talking about mercy, talking about forgiveness. Father, we recently, just last weekend, Belize City saw a bloodbath, the worst I have seen in a long time. We had several killings over issues such as revenge, no forgiveness. The first one started with a young man was shot in his car, and it was reported in the news that the same person was involved in an accident a year or so ago where somebody died as a result of this person driving over the individual. I'm not sure if that's the case, but obvious revenge, that's a challenge. And then there was the shooting of a grandmother, a mother, a 62-year-old, and a young teenager in the same house. Imagine a gunman, and probably a young boy, going into a home and just empty his gun on females, women sitting in the house. That is something unheard of.
It's cowardly.
That is something we do not see.
It's evil.
Yes, it's evil indeed. When should mercy fit in? When should that happen? Father, and I could go on because there were a couple other instances. And as a result, there is fear on the streets. On Sunday, going to Sunday night Mass, some people from South Side, Belize City, did not go to Mass because they were afraid to be on the streets. Never heard of it. Never heard of it. So let us start our conversation about mercy and forgiveness. How does that fit into how we are feeling here in Belize City after something like this happens? Father.
Yeah, I think when you're speaking about, as you bring up these persons and these evils, I think the sentiment that comes is sorrow. Perhaps it's anger for some, frustration for others. But for me, there's a deep sorrow that these people died. And some of them were just guilty by association, And you see in the nature of evil very often it's not rational, especially when the anger and the rage of revenge begins to guide us. It's not. It's something that the emotion, the passion, these passion killings become something. You see the mark of that which is evil. And those of us who speak about it, repost it, and we ourselves can lose our peace. We ourselves can begin to lose our hope and become discouraged. Whenever you see something great evil, part of that temptation is, it can be, God, where are you? Where are you in this evil? And it's precisely in that darkness when the light shines the brightest. But sometimes we as Christians, followers of Christ, it's precisely in those dark times we must be able to help people see the light when they can't see it. in the midst of the emotion, the sorrow and the anger and the confusion. Because if we lose that sight of the light, the gospel, lose the sight of Christ, naturally we try and make sense of it, try and make things right. And then the temptation is to take justice in our own hands. We have to do something about this. You have two actions. We have to do something about this, or we just say, well, there it goes again, and we just can't give away. Both are a way of surrendering, and neither really help. When we surrender and say, oh, look what happened, oh, wow, and indifference weighs in our hearts. And it's business as usual, as you say. These are murders. These are people's lives. It can never become business as usual. So indifference doesn't lead to anything. Right? And I think, as I'm saying, I remember Pope Francis, he says our parish must become these islands of mercy in the midst of the seas of indifference. And so we as Christians, we people who are called to live loving God, love one another, we're called to radiate this love of God in the midst of this one symptom of despair, of indifference. Because, oh, who's going to do it anyway? Oh, look at the corruption. Who's going to deal with that anyway? Look at the gangs. Oh, they've been here so long now. And a just man, one who's living in Christ, can never give up and succumb to the temptation of indifference. Okay.
Interesting you say that, Father, because now it is coming so close to our doors through technology, where you see on the news, you see posting via Facebook or other social media, graphic images of some of these things as they unfold, or results of, which I know is an issue. But then how can me, as a Christian man, explain to my teenage sons what is taking place and how should we view what is happening?
Yeah, well, first I want to address those images. That's an additional evil. It takes an evil and multiplies it, and we really shouldn't repost those things. There's a sacredness, and we have to teach people that not everything is news. Like it's this kind of this symptom of being curious about certain things, and that kind of curiosity and evil doesn't really help. And if anything, we become spreading these members who spread evil without hope, and that phenomenon is not healthy. Right? So that type of, but it's true. I was just there's a young man who gave into that hopelessness. Right, that happens, and he fell into that temptation of taking his own life, and it was viewed. Right? There's a video of it, and that doesn't help anything. Being reposting that image, people have said I was just counseling people who saw the image and that they couldn't sleep after that. You know, I think when that great evil hits, and to magnify it, as Christians, we have to have that prudence. That's not where social media is supposed to be used for, right? So there's right just in that in general, huh?
Listen to that. I'm glad you're, and this is one word of advice for us Christians. Try to close off from it.
Yeah,
it will not help.
Yeah, no, it doesn't help. It really doesn't. It doesn't bring hope.
Sometimes our curiosity gets the better of us. Try to control it. Sure. Try to be in charge.
Yeah, Vince, even the news. You know, even the way the news is, I don't know how helpful it is just to keep reporting violence over and over again. In the end, we have to know about it. We have to be informed. But it can, if you find yourself watching the nightly news and losing that hope, be careful of that. That's not something feeding your soul. I'm not saying we ignore this, and we'll get to this, right? So, but we're just talking about, in the light of the topic we're speaking about, you know, there's this indifference that can begin to happen, but it can be tied into this despair, and you're starting to see it. You're starting to this kind of, it's kind of like this wanting to give up. What can we do anyway? It's just too great. And there's a lie in that. There's really a lie, and evil always wants to make itself more tough than it is. You see it in the tough guy walking around the street or whatever it may be. Huh? But you see even the greater evil. We talked about the occult, or the evil ones that have fallen. They're fallen, they're weak, they've lost. But there's always a temptation to puff them up bigger than they are. like in movies, like Hollywood, the way they speak about the fallen angels and things like this. It really, I think we can fall into mistake, even as Christians and Catholics, we can speak about the enemy too much, because that's not really where the focus is. It's important that we know, it's supposed to understand, have good, proper discernment of the spirits and not be oblivious to it. But our gaze and our strength comes in gazing upon Him, Jesus Christ, who is the message of hope. The most gruesome event, the most gruesome evil of all history, we say gaze upon, because it's not the end. The death of Jesus on the cross. Here we are coming up, right? Just coming through this Holy Week. We're called to mind the death and suffering of Christ, and now we enter into the response for that, the why. Why did He have to go through that? Right? And it's led to the resurrection. We can never separate the crucifixion of Christ from Easter Sunday. And the problem with a lot of these violences and the way we promote this on social media, and the way even we talk about it among the dinner table or amongst our associates in business, we speak about it without Easter Sunday, outside the light of the resurrection. And it produces this hopelessness, which is a lie, which is a lie and is a temptation. But it's how we feel. Like, we can't deny that feeling when you see this darkness happening. It's like, what can we do? Where is this coming from? Right? And there's such a great temptation to try to fix it without God, and it's absurd. The whole thing's absurd. The bishop wrote to us, and he reminds us, if we try to live a life without God, don't expect things to be better for us. He said that in our Lenten message. And it very is true, where there are consequences for certain things. And if God allows an evil to play out, it's always to bring about a greater good. And so we need a message of hope. The more you see, the darker the evil gets. We must be messengers of hope. But what is that message that people are yearning for? In the midst of because we talk about the indifference, but then you see the revenge, right? And it's the same hopelessness. Really? The same guy, the guy who takes his own gun and gets revenge, it's a crying of hopelessness. Because nothing can take back my parents or my mom or my sister or my friend that got murdered. So therefore I must take this in my own hands. That person died, so this number of people have to die too. And so it's this kind of made up sense of justice in my own hands. But it's hopelessness. Because it's a justice without God. We take it in our own hands. And in the end, does that bring the person peace?
No.
It never does.
You cannot.
It never does. It never does. It's foolishness, right? It never brings peace. Eye for an eye. Like, you kill someone, I'm going to go kill someone else. Oh, okay, now I feel better? It doesn't work.
Because somebody else is coming for you.
You sleep with a gun under your pillow. You go into the bathroom in the middle of the night with a gun in your hand because you're afraid somebody's going to come walking through the door. There's no peace for that. Never mind that you have a human conscience. The death of someone. Life has value. You read it down. You can warp that conscience all you want, but it speaks to our heart. And so the fact is, we may pretend to live without God all we want, but our hearts are made for God. And so we have to surround ourselves with all kinds of noise and drugs and whatever other addiction we want, just to keep that conscience from breaking into our lives and say, stop. Right? But then where do you turn then, right? This is the thing, right? This is where we begin to see, when you see the evil rise its head, when we have the sea of we begin to look out on that sea of indifference. And you begin to see what we saw in that bloodbath, as you say, in this taking the justice in our own hands. Where do we go then as Christians? What are they crying out for, really? This person who's indifferent, or this person who's caught up in this rage? Because both of them lead to hopelessness and no peace, right? And here we see is precisely in this darkness where they don't have an answer, right? And this is where Christ breaks in with His light, see, in human history.
Exactly.
And He says mercy. He says mercy.
He says mercy indeed, Father. And mercy is extremely important, especially for us to hear at this time. And before we get into that mercy conversation, because that will really shed some light, we'll go to break. You're watching Ask Your Father. I'm with Father Scott. We'll be right back. We're back. You're watching Ask Your Father. With me, we have Father Scott. And we're talking about mercy. Father, I want us to take a slight switch here, because it concerns me, it bothers me. Whenever there is a killing, particularly shooting or however, the person who does the crime, you would often hear, not really the person who does the crime, if a kid gets killed, a son in particular, you would hear the mother or the relatives of that son kind of crying and are sad, as they should be. It's their son, it's their brother. And you hear about how good that person is. You know, they don't understand how he got killed. And, you know, and a lot of the times these same young men are the ones in the gang element doing similar things to other gang affiliates, etc. I see mercy there, but how can you show mercy to someone who is out there killing other people?
No, yeah, that's a very good question. Well, there's a couple of things there. I think there's a phenomenon that can happen with parents that can only, or your friends, because that person's your friend, you tend to only see the good in them, right? And you can be blind to the faults. If you're in love, you know, if you fall in love with someone, it's the only one that was good. In the honeymoon stage, when you get married, come year 3 in your marriage, and all of a sudden you see these things that you don't see. So we can be, they say love is blind, so there is an element that we just blind ourselves to obvious imperfections that can be there. But there is something else that, where because I know this person, even though I know they're doing wrong, where you just begin to ignore it. You know, and you see this where back in the day, I think if a child misbehaved in the school, they get a detention or something, or they get a jug, or go back home and tell the parents they got a jug, and then they get punished again. You know, nowadays they get disciplined at the school. They go back home. Mom comes back and starts yelling at the teacher.
Of course, try to discipline the teacher.
Right. And what's being lost, I think, that there's a protectiveness. We become biased, you know, and it can skew our judgment. Especially it can skew justice. The logic, you can go further in when you see it in politics, or when you lose a job because of your political color. There's something in experience, people say this happens, and it's against the Constitution. It's in your Constitution, it's written there. You can't discriminate according to that. But people say that happens, or it could be any kind of way where it's just not just, it's not fair. And why I bring that up is, especially when we talk about mercy, I think sometimes we can look at mercy as if it ignores God's justice, as if it ignores consequences. And this is an example of a parent that never disciplines his child. Okay, that's my little boy. Just let him do what he wants to do. He becomes that spoiled child that does whatever he wants to do when he's 3 or 4 becomes that spoiled child doing whatever he wants to do when he's 13, 14. You know, and it becomes more of a problem.
Yes.
So I think it's very important when we're talking about mercy, we don't ignore justice. So you can punish your child, right, and still be merciful. I think that the idea needs to come back a little bit. Because I think there's a great mistake that mercy ignores God's justice, and it doesn't. Like when Jesus Christ, like justice must be acknowledged, and hence this idea of confessing our sins. You know, we have to acknowledge our sinfulness. Like the reason why we need mercy is because we were unjust.
Yes.
Because there's justice has been violated. But when we ignore God's justice, we actually, in the end, ignore mercy. It's not mercy. It's lawlessness that we support. This is very important because we keep coming back to it. When Jesus forgave the adulterous woman, for example, and he said that those who are without sin throw the first stone, and that beginning with the elders, they throw the stone and they walk away. And then he says, and there she was all alone. He says, go and... But Jesus, at the end of that, as he forgives her, as no one condemns you, neither do I. But then he says, go and sin no more. So mercy does not ignore sin or say that it wasn't sin at all. No, sin is very real. Take a good look at a crucifix. There's consequences of that. But in the midst of that justice, acknowledging the due punishment, then God pays pays a price and forgives. Here we're getting to something about divine mercy. And another example that came up, they said this false mercy. They talked about the decriminalization of marijuana in Belize, right? And this is this experiment they're saying. Already kids in schools are in primary school. You're seeing it, kids smoking. And anyway, as these kind of experiments are going on, one of the arguments was, well, that poor young child in that poor village who gets caught with a little pack of weed and he's thrown into jail and gets a criminal record for the rest of his life. We have to, this poor young man, And so in the light of clemency, right, in the light of mercy, the legislative branch takes it upon themselves to change the law. And it sounds so nice when you first hear about it. It's like, well, yeah, of course, it's not fair. Why would this child go to jail for so long and get this record? And he just was made a foolish decision as a young man, right? Well, the problem is with that is that clemency or mercy doesn't belong to the legislative branch. The legislative branch makes the laws. Yes. It belongs to the judicial branch. They're the ones, you give the judicial branch to have the clemency or the common sense to recognize this young man is a different case versus some drug dealer on the streets. And you know what? That's how it's supposed to work. But this notion, and really in the public debate of decriminalization of marijuana, that notion we need to change the law because of this poor little boy with a criminal record, really it wasn't clemency, it was lawlessness. We're changing the law to support behavior. And this is the reason why I point this out, because there's a pattern there. When you begin to change the law to support behavior, it falls into this same false mercy narrative that encourages lawlessness. And so I'm not saying because decriminalization of marijuana, you have this bloodbath. However, the pattern of that decriminalization, it's all kinds of things. Oh, you'll save money, right? But the main problem with it, you're supporting vice and not supporting virtue. Simple. Even the law that was, right? It's 10 grams. So you can smoke 50 grams as long as you only have 10 on your person, in your home, you're fine. Never mind secondhand smoke for the kids, right? You're not even thinking about that. No, the harm done to the kids or whatever it may be. Oh no, we don't worry about that. As long as there's 10 grams someplace, right? But you don't measure what's in the bloodstream. We don't do that with alcohol. There's even the law is not written to encourage temperance. It's just encouraged to just don't get caught, right? And it's not just a short-sighted law, but why do I bring this up? Because you see that's a logic that leads into vice. And so they say, oh, we're going to save money, but look at I guess in Belize City, they call the BDF in. Because why? Passion crimes. When does revenge comes from? This fits of anger that leads into violence or sexual crimes. It comes from a lack of virtue.
That's true.
Right? Which we're now, because of this law, the law is supporting, whether you want, whatever your argument is, fact is, it's supporting it. Whenever you have drug use, that affects your growth to be responsible and follow through. You're lacking in virtue. And so now all of a sudden we see the consequences of the lack of virtue in these passion killings. And now we're like, oh, okay, we got to solve this problem. I can't believe this happened. And so let's take all the money that we saved with decriminalization of marijuana and pay double the BDF to come in now and pay overtime, or I don't know, whatever it may be.
Of course.
Whatever logic of you can't use the marketplace to legislate morality, right? It just never works, huh? And so the whole idea of the bottom line, we're going to save money, is just silliness too, right? Because it would be like a business saves money if it doesn't open its doors. If it doesn't do business, yeah, you save money. Well, if you don't try and enforce justice in the streets, yeah, you're going to save money, right?
And you would expect, Father, that the justice of the state would support the moral balance that we need.
Yeah.
And it doesn't.
The civil law must be based on natural law, and the natural law must be on divine law. But what's beginning to happen now, we begin to move away from that natural law, huh? The order of virtue. Let me say this another way, and then this will lead us into divine mercy, okay?
Sure, definitely.
There's a Christian philosopher that speaks, he made it very simply put, and if you want to build community, and this is what we want unity amongst diversity in beliefs, right? And then he says on the other spectrum, on the below, is chaos. And the bloodbath that we saw is an example of chaos. And he says there's two things that a government official, or two things that we can do in society to move from chaos to community. And these are the two tools we have. One is cops, which represents the enforcement of the law, enforcement of judgment. The other one is conscience, This is the interior encouragement of virtue and moral formation that we have, that really the church becomes a moral voice, right? And so you have these two. Where you lack the formation of conscience, you need more cops. Where you lack the more you have strong consciences, the less you need the cops. But when you live in a culture where you have someone who has a role of authority in the community and says, shut up to the churches, right? And begins to cloud the role of conscience and keep leading the community, then what do you have to do? You have to bring the BDF on your streets and try to keep it in the community. But there's a problem with that. You're completely ignoring that we're human beings. You can only do so much.
That's true.
You only do so much by the force of the hand. It just doesn't work, right?
And I'm glad you're bringing this up, Father, because, on early Saturday morning, Saturday during the day, we were under siege, it seems, here in the city. And the Prime Minister and his team met on Sunday. Some of his cabinet members and senior rank people in the defense ministry. And it was to come up with a solution, or how will they deal with this situation? And, I was talking to my wife, I said, you think maybe they will invite people from the churches, people from these different groups to get in the conversation to see how we could try to solve this problem as a community? And of course, it didn't happen that way. And it kind of strengthened the police and that aspect, and disregard the moral end, or the conscience. The conscience end that you're talking about.
And this is what I'm saying. It's a pattern, right? It's a pattern that we're getting. We're feeding the vice, paying off people. We're feeding the vice, right? But then we say, well, we got to stop the problem. But we keep feeding the vice with our laws and what we're saying, what we're doing. It's not going to be solved. Yeah. It's foolishness. And that's why the church-state partnership is so important for a community. Yeah. But if you start to say, okay, shut up to the churches, you become foolish. You have a bloodbath on your hands, right? But here's the thing: the message of mercy, right? Where does this come in? This is what's so beautiful about mercy. It speaks precisely to the area of the heart, the conscience. It goes right to the heart of the matter. And why it's a message of hope? Because it speaks to the heart of that gang member. It speaks to that one that lost his mom, right? And if that message of mercy can pierce the heart of that person, okay, I don't have to go kill that person's mom. Okay, or I know my sins are so great, I thought there's no way I can be saved, and all of a sudden we begin to say there is infinite mercy.
I'm lost. There's nothing for me. I've killed XYZ.
There's nothing that can happen to me. And this is why right now in our times, this message, I would even say for Belize right now, this is the message of our time. This is the message of hope. People need to know the mercy of our Father in heaven. They need to know this mercy, and it's real. This is what Jesus came. He came from heaven to earth to show us the way. He reveals to us this infinite mercy of God. If our sins if you take all the sins in the world, one of the things that Jesus said to St. Faustina, if you were to take all the sins in the world and gather them all together, right, it would just be a drop in the ocean of God's mercy. I remember reading that and being so empowered, being so filled with
that's
hope.
Loaded. That's loaded.
It's huge. It's amazing. Talk about new beginnings, right? For everyone. But that does not mean we ignore God's mercy. And it's also, divine mercy is different from social justice. We're not saying, okay, just because you have money, go give money to people. Go give money to the poor. Just go. No, that's not the charity. It's very different when we're talking about divine mercy. This mercy flows from encountering the mercy of the heart of Jesus. And we become these living instruments and signs of the mercy of Jesus. It's not just some atheist giving money to the poor person. It's very different.
Wow. Father, I have a person I know, a colleague. His wife and children, they go to Mass every Sunday and try to live a Catholic, a Christian life. And the husband wouldn't join them. And I, out of curiosity, asked him one time why he doesn't. And he said, if he would tell me all that he has done, he doesn't feel that he's worthy of going to Mass with his family. He doesn't know about the mercy that we will talk about in the last segment of this show.
Sure.
Father, we will take another break. Okay. And when we come back, we will talk about divine mercy Divine Mercy Sunday, which is the Sunday after Easter. We need some hope, and this may provide some hope for us.
Right.
We're off to break. We'll be right back. We're back. You're watching Ask Your Father. With Father Scott, we're talking about divine mercy. And this may be the hope to a very, I would say, negative conversation, dialogue we've had in the previous segment about what we're experiencing here in Belize City. And we need some hope. And I know that the Sunday after Easter Sunday is Divine Mercy Sunday. Father, can you tell us about Divine Mercy Sunday, what it is, and why is it so important?
Divine Mercy Sunday was asked from Jesus himself, right? And through we have private revelation and public revelations, and through a private revelation to humble, uneducated Polish nun, known as Sister Maria Faustina. She was gifted with different visions at an early age for Jesus calling her to be a religious. And she hesitated, but she persevered in the call, and finally she entered. After passing through different discernments and temptations, she was tempted to leave the order, the community that she was in, which was dedicated to mercy, but Jesus himself spoke to her again. He says, she was tempted to go off where she could pray more in solitude. He said, no, this is where I've called you. Jesus said, ask her to stay. And he has plans for her. And he revealed to her his plans to promote this great message of hope to the world. Now remember, this was happening just before World War II, where we saw some great evils against humanity. And in the midst of, and this is in Poland, a nation that suffered the two great world regimes of evil, really, in one way. One was the Nazi Germany, which came over in Poland. And after being liberated from Nazi Germany, it was communist Russia, atheist communism coming in and overcoming them. And this is, in the midst of this, Jesus comes to Poland to give a message to the world and raises up great saints, St. Faustina being one of them, but John Paul II and St. Maximilian Kolbe being another one. In the midst of this, there's this message of mercy that is proclaimed to the world of this great darkness, and God does it so often, of this great darkness. Why does he allow this evil to happen, right? Is to always bring about the greater good. Well, that greater good is for us to reap now. And that's this message of the depths of God's infinite mercy. And so the devotion itself has, the way Jesus wants to bring us this mercy, of course, it completely consistent with the scriptures. Right? A renewal of meditating and being attentive to seeing the great mercy of God speak to us, being revealed to us in the sacred scriptures. Both in the Old and New Testament. Psalm 51 is a beautiful psalm of God's mercy. And of course, the parables of the prodigal son is another one. Luke 15 that just speaks to God's mercy. But as this is brought out, you see in these accounts and these multiple visions over many years, Jesus forming her, teaching her it was a great mystic, right? She was a gift of contemplation. She could read hearts. She shared in the sufferings of Jesus Christ, the hidden stigmata.
So she had a stigmata, yeah.
Hidden for a moment. There was, of course, in the visions, right? And through that, she was asked to write word for word what Jesus was telling her in this diary. And her always in obedience to her spiritual director, she followed through. So this is the diary of St. Faustina.
She wrote a diary. Right. And we have that, I think we have that in our bookstore.
This is this is something here at Divine Mercy Church in the city. We are now renewing our efforts to make this more available to people. And so we can get this for $25 Belize, which is relatively cheap for this.
With all that information.
Not try and make money on it, just try and get this out. This message of mercy, in such a way that is, when you read the mystics, in these encounters, it's the gospel truth brought in a way that can touch the heart much easier. It's a great wisdom.
And in her vision, you know, she saw how an image of Jesus.
Multiple visions that she had. One was, it was on the feast day of February 22nd, the Chair of St. Peter now, that's when we celebrate, 1931, when she was given the vision of the merciful Savior, now known as the Divine Mercy image. And it was Jesus Christ with his right hand up in blessing, his left hand touching this wound of his heart. And out of that wound of his heart were flowing out these rays, red and a pale ray. See this statue, and you recognize it's the resurrected Jesus with the wounds of his hands there. And so in this image, and he asked this image to be painted. And this is one associated, there's certain things associated with this message of mercy, one of it which is the image of divine mercy. Now it's a painted image, not a statue as we have here. The painted image, we have a large divine mercy image, Divine Mercy Church, that he promised many graces would flow from this image. So the image is one. He spoke about the hour of mercy. This is associated with when Jesus died on the cross. It's roughly around 3 p.m. on Friday. So that 3 p.m. afternoon, he encouraged St. Faustina and those who would benefit from her writings to take 3 p.m., to set your phones for 3 p.m., to immerse yourself in the Station of the Cross, and visit the Blessed Sacrament. If you're unable to do those things, to take the time to call to mind his passion for you. So every 3 o'clock hour.
And also this is when, you know, one would do the Divine Mercy Chaplet as well.
And okay, so then he gave St. Faustina a prayer as well, which you're speaking about. And this Divine Mercy Chaplet can be prayed on your rosary, right? There's a certain prayer for your Our Father beans, there's a certain prayer on the Hail Mary beans. And it's not just a shorter prayer if you don't have enough time to pray the rosary. It's not a shorter version of the rosary. But it really is a powerful pleading, meditation on the Passion of Christ, calling upon God's mercy on ourselves and on the whole world. And Jesus is so powerful. I try to tell people to learn this. It's almost like it's like the spiritual CPR, so to speak. If someone's dying, of course you find a priest for last rites. But if you're unable to get to a priest, or the person's not able to receive the sacraments because they're not Catholic, let's say, whatever it may be, Jesus promised that those who pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet by the bedside of a dying person, he will stand as a merciful Savior, not as a just judge, between that person and his Father. And so to call upon God's mercy, to that work of charity, to help someone as they pass over in that hour of death, that most important time when the battle is most fierce for the soul. And to recognize that we have a tool in this time of mercy to assist people to pass over, you know, when the battle is most fierce to try and gain that soul. We have now this tool of divine mercy prayed on the chaplet where we can assist our loved ones, our brothers and sisters, even though they're the greatest of sinners. He says even if you pray this chaplet only once, you know, that person's heart will be disposed to the mercy of God. And so it's a beautiful power. Like, it doesn't even make sense when you think about it, you have these great, huge sins, and just that moment of grace to have your heart open to God's mercy can make a difference of salvation.
And it can.
It can. It's amazing.
For the sake of his sorrowful passion.
Have mercy on us and on the whole world.
That's the repeated prayer, 50 times.
That's right.
It's interesting. Father, there are some graces that one can receive on Divine Mercy Sunday. Okay,
now this is the other element of the message of mercy that Jesus speaks about in the diary.
Sure.
This Divine Mercy Sunday is known before as the second Sunday after Easter, but he asked that this be proclaimed as Divine Mercy Sunday, and through many different events at this point, it was in Providence that we have a Polish Pope at the time, right? When her writings were being put into question. At one point, this diary was put aside, and what it was a mistranslation from the Polish. It leads to a lot of negative reviews amongst some theologians. Well, now you get this Polish Pope, who's not only the Polish Pope, but he knows languages, right? And he recognized the sensitivity of a translation. And he's in Providence one that comes up to renew the discernment of this work. And eventually she's beatified. And after unexplained miracle, as all saints in the Catholic Church, that can't be explained by science or any kind of doctor, but and known for the intercession of St. Faustina, she's declared a saint by the authority of the Church. And this was done in year 2000. And this is significant why this devotion actually needs to pause versus all other devotions in this third millennium. John Paul II quite pointedly chose her to be the first canonized saint of year 2000, calling her the saint of the third millennium, saying that this message of mercy is what is a message of this next millennium. And she was canonized in the first declared Divine Mercy Sunday. And Jesus asked for it, but it took a long time, for the Church to discern these private revelations, to eventually say that this is the day. And a side note, our own Divine Mercy Church in Belize, after a lot of graces and charity of the local people and abroad, many prayers and sacrifices of the people of God, this church was built, and it was consecrated on that same Divine Mercy Sunday. People don't know this. When St. Faustina was canonized as saint, and when the Universal Church officially acknowledged the first Divine Mercy Sunday liturgically, and now we do that. Now on this grace, Jesus asked for a feast of His mercy. Now leading up to this, He has a novena He gave the Church. It starts on Good Friday, and Jesus asks that we bring, or the person praying, bring to Him, His throne in prayer, different souls, the most in need of His mercy, great sinners, those children, the priests and religious. He goes through these different categories of people throughout the day. Those who promote my mercy and glory.
For the 9 days. For those of you who are not familiar with a novena,
thank you.
It's a 9 days prayer, and it ends at the feast day or on the particular time.
That's right, and then it leads us right into Divine Mercy Sunday. So Jesus gave us asking the Church to be in prayer leading up to this time where the oceans of His mercy are opened up. And He says this is a time where we can receive complete forgiveness of sin. And He says, and punishment. Now here's a trick, a point of confusion I think that can happen, right? That when we sin, we need God's mercy, but even after we ask for forgiveness, there can be what's called temporal punishment due. So we can have, and this is what we call purgatory, if we still have temporary punishment due, if we have an imperfect, if there's still a disordered attachment to creation. And so there's two things. We want a plenary indulgence, right? The plenary indulgence is when you do something that the Church allows, and you receive communion, go confession within 8 days. And then with the plenary indulgence, you also have no attachment to venial sin. And so the Church now gives a plenary indulgence for those who attend Divine Mercy celebration and take part in those festivities. And so you can go to confession within 8 days, receive communion worthily in the holy way, attend Divine Mercy Sunday, and the idea is you receive that plenary indulgence, complete forgiveness of sin and punishment, if you have no attachment to venial sin.
Okay.
And
tell us what that is, Father. No attachment to venial sin.
No attachment to being impatient, no attachment to material things, no attachment to the flesh, the world, or the devil. And so even the smallest attachment can keep that from being a perfect plenary indulgence. If that's the case, we have some kind of imperfect attachment to a creature, then it would be a partial indulgence. Okay? Now, but Jesus' message is interesting. And this is where people debate. That's from the Universal Church. For those with devotion and faith, and read the message from the diary as is, he doesn't make any mention of that attachment. And he doesn't even really technically say plenary indulgence, right? He just says those who receive communion on that day of Divine Mercy Sunday, the graces of His mercy are open for complete forgiveness of sins and punishment, period.
Complete forgiveness of sin and punishment.
On that day, right?
On Divine Mercy Sunday.
So there's people in devotion and faith, there should be lineups for confession on that day.
I know.
People who go in that devotion and trusting that word to get that new beginning. The difference, though, with Divine Mercy Sunday, if that's the case, it can only be applied to the person. Where a plenary indulgence can be applied to, and this is can be applied to ourselves, but it can be applied to someone else, a soul in purgatory, things like that. But that the divine mercy promise, Jesus was speaking to the sinner, to all of us who wants to come back and get that new beginning, to be restored to our baptismal promises.
I know. For those of you who haven't done a confession in a long time, those of you who may have issues with the sacrament of reconciliation in confession, this is one day you come and you do a good confession, and it is forgiven automatically. If, of course, under the conditions that you mentioned, Father. It's good for the viewers to know this and make a date. I know for my family, we go early Sunday morning. I know at Divine Mercy Church, they have a whole host of priests during a cluster of time.
Oh, is the Divine Mercy Sunday? Oh no, it's a huge feast. So we have from midday to 3 hours of confession and adoration, and confessions are going constantly.
And we try to fit it in.
Sure.
It's important to us.
Really, like when it was the year of mercy, it was like a pilgrim place. We had people come from all over to the church, and we do welcome people for that. That day is really a special time of the Mass at 3 p.m. And then we have the procession, Eucharistic procession, and of course food and celebration.
Yes, it is a big deal. It is a big deal. Rightly so. Father, when you look at the statue, or you look at the painting of Divine Mercy, at the bottom it says a few words. And the words seem simple, but I'm sure it is profound. It says, Jesus, I trust in you.
And those few words are the core of the message of St. Faustina's spirituality. She was constantly being encouraged to trust Jesus. And as much trust in her relationship with God, if it would be summarized with a word, it would be summarized with trust. To trust His mercy, to trust God. And she was constantly in her life being put in these situations where she had to surrender and trust and reaffirm this trust in the providence. However, her relationship to her neighbor, it was mercy. And God said that if you're going to be a secretary of my mercy, you must, this devotion, this message is just not, okay, I can sit back and receive mercy. If we have received mercy, we're called to give mercy to our neighbor. And so that leads to active works of mercy. That means it leads to the sacrifice of our discomfort to share in the suffering of our brothers and sisters. And this divine mercy, again, I want to say this is different from just someone wanting to give money, because I feel some kind of compassion for someone's suffering, physical suffering. This is continuing the work of Jesus. After receiving His mercy, we continue the divine love of God. It's a pattern that what we should do every time we receive Eucharist. That Eucharist we receive, we're called to go and love others. Mother Teresa said that our Eucharist remains incomplete if it does not lead to service of the poor. And so this message of mercy, if lived out, is a message of hope, and it transforms individuals into holy saints, and it transforms communities to be the kingdom of God on earth as it is in heaven.
Father, you've really shed a lot of light, and it's the hope that we need to hear, the hope that the Church offers, the hope that our Catholic faith provides for us. Yes.
Yeah, if I can, and especially when we spoke about when we do see evils happening, and I hate to say it, you're going to see more until you're going to see more until we recognize and come back to God and come back to the path of virtue. As long as we keep playing without coming back to God or try to fix it ourselves, you're going to see more. However, as Christians and Catholics, we're not to lose our faith or fear or find a despair or escape into indifference. But we have all the more responsibility to bring the message of the gospel, because that is the message that heals, and that's the message of hope. But don't get discouraged when you see the difficulties and the darkness increase. It's the consequences of our decisions. God hasn't forgotten about us. He walks with us. And you who follow Christ must be the message of that hope in those times.
Wow, strong words there, Father. Because I'm trying to give a message of hope, and you're saying it will remain somewhat in the darkness, but we should know how to, and He's not allowing us to walk alone. He's with us. Thank you for that message. That is very profound. For us to know that it may get worse, but we must not fear. We must not get anxious. We must remain grounded in our faith. We must be prayerful. And, those of us who have families, make sure you bring your family together and pray and do rosaries and do the Divine Mercy Chaplet. These are some of the things that you could do to maintain that feel of safeness. It's important that we get all this information for us to take advantage of the Divine Mercy Sunday. Father, as we go to wrap, I'd like to ask you, as is usual, to pray for our viewers. Whoever is out there who is watching us and may have some issues, some concern, I'd ask Father to pray for you.
The Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Heavenly Father, most merciful Father, we come before you as your children. We so love you, trust in you. Look upon your merciful Son. As we come in our sinfulness, we turn to Jesus and his most precious blood. For this is the sake of his sorrowful passion, have mercy on us and on the whole world. With great confidence and trust in your mercy that you have chosen us, you guide us in our providence. Though we walk through darkness, you are with us in your light. Help us to be that light of mercy. Help us to be that light of hope in which you have called us to be. Help us to bring the message of the gospel to those who do not know you, who do not know your love, who do not know your mercy. Help us to show great acts of mercy in the midst of indifference of the world. Those who have fallen into despair or revenge, help us to bring love and compassion and peace. Lord, you have entrusted us with a mission. Give us courage and faith. Give us hope and love, that we may be true children of God, moving in your freedom, docile to your Spirit, transforming the nation. Mary, Mother of Mercy, pray for us.
Amen. Amen.
May Almighty God bless you and all Belize. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen. And amen. Thank you very much, Father. Thank you for that very inspirational prayer. As we go to wrap, I'd like to encourage you to take advantage of a Divine Mercy Sunday, and also to go to your neighborhood church and ask your father, ask your priest, any questions you may have. You've been watching Ask Your Father. I am your host, Vincent Palacio, and we were with Father Scott from Divine Mercy Parish. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.